Hi, it's Papa. This is the second video in the Geologic History of Georgia series, GH2. And I was going to tell you about the taconic mountain building event, putting that off to GH3, because I realized I forgot to talk about the physiographic provinces of Georgia versus the geologic provinces of Georgia. So I'm referring to the book. So here we go. Here is a map. Hope that looks okay. This shows the geologic provinces of Georgia. No, the physiographic. What does physiographic mean? It just means the landscape, the topography, mountainous region versus rolling hills versus sandy coastal plain. And so here they are. Down here, below Augusta, Macon, Columbus, and we have the coastal plain. That's a region of sandy soil. There's some sand hills there, and there's some other features there that we can talk about later. Above that, this kind of dark greenish, brownish greenish area is the piedmont. That's an area of rolling hills. Rolling hills, the foothills of the mountains. Then you go up to this kind of yellowy orangey area. That is the mountain province, physiographic province of Georgia. And then those are mountainous, that's mountainous terrain, obviously. Now we go west from there, we hit this blue area. That's called the Valley and Ridge Province. And it's these big valleys like the Great Valley, which is the same thing as the Shenandoah Valley, just further south. And then there's these little ridges inside to the left of this, to the west of this valley. These are called the Armuchee Ridges. And then over to the west of that is the Chickamauga Valley, another big valley. And then up here, this kind of pinkish maybe, whatever it is, this is the Cumberland Plateau. And in Georgia it's called the Cumberland Plateau, but in other states further north it's called the Allegheny Plateau. And it's a big, the plateau is a steep mountain face on the western side of the Valley and Ridge province, and it sticks up about 800 feet above the Valley and Ridge, and it's a big plateau. It's kind of mountainous on the east side, and then it kind of flattens out as you go to the west. So those are the physiographic provinces of Georgia, and they are very similar to the geologic provinces, but there's some difference. So let's look at the geologic provinces of Georgia. Here we go. Okay, you have the coastal plain, Augusta, Macon, Columbus, down here. And it is the same, virtually the same as the physiographic province. Sandy soil, we'll talk about that later. Above the fall line, that's this line that runs from Augusta, Macon to Columbus. And it's where the rivers fall off the rocky, hilly terrain onto the flat coastal plain, sandy coastal plain. In the old days, big ships could navigate up this far, but they could not go any further because there were waterfalls and shoals and cascades all along here. Above the coastal plain is what physiographic province would be called the Piedmont, but it's divided into several geologic terrain. And what is a geologic terrain? It's just a hunk of land that has a unique geologic history, and that unique geologic history is different from the geologic history of the other geologic provinces. That's like saying the same thing twice. Anyway, this part from the fall line up to this red line here is called the Carolina terrain. Very interesting terrain, and this terrain goes under the coastal plain. It's just not exposed, and we'll talk about it later. But it started out as a huge mini continent that crashed into North America way up north in Maine, from Maine down to about Virginia, and then it moved south to where it is now. Above that, between this red line and this dotted line, is a thin piece of pie slice, or you could say cornbread, and it's the Cat Square Terrane. That used to be an ocean basin that was to the west of this Carolina terrain. So that's the Cat Square Basin. Above that, and the Cat Square Basin is pretty easy to delineate. This is Lake Hartwell. This is maybe Lake Russell. And if you could bring them to a point at Jackson, Georgia, you've got the Cat Square Terrane roughly. When this book was written, the author did not know about the Cat Square Terrane, and not every geologist knew about it. So I've kind of dashed it in here. Above that is the remainder of the Piedmont is divided into the inner Piedmont, which is the part below this dashed line, and the eastern Blue Ridge, which is the part above this dashed line. This dashed line represents the Brevard Fault Zone, a very enigmatic, interesting, strange, and unique fault line. And just to give you a quick history, the Carolina terrane plus the Cat Square terrane plus the inner Piedmont slid down from way up north to where they are now along this Brevard Fault Zone. And also the Chattahoochee River basically follows the Brevard Fault Zone. And so that makes it easy to find. Okay. Now, above the Brevard Fault Zone, you have the eastern Blue Ridge, which also, geologic province, which also includes this hunk of mountains up here. So the eastern Blue Ridge is this, and plus this. Everything on the north side of the Brevard Fault Zone that's not another terrane. West of the eastern Blue Ridge is the western Blue Ridge. The western Blue Ridge is a very unique geologic terrain, and it relates directly to what we talked about in GH1, the rifting of Rodinia. This is where the rifting of Rodinia sediments are. That's why I said you could go to Amicalola Falls State Park in here someplace, or Fort Mountain State Park to see the rocks of the rifting of Rodinia. To the west of that is the Valley and Ridge province, geologic province, which is just like the Valley and Ridge physiographic province. This red line represents a huge major fault where all of these terrains slid up on the land and covered a lot of the Valley and Ridge province. It's called the Great Smoky Fault, or the Allatoona. No, not the Allatoona Fault. I don't know what it's called in Georgia. I mean, I can't remember, but up in the Great Smoky Mountains, it's called the Great Smoky Fault. It's a huge fault. It was installed, so to speak, when Africa crashed into North America in the Allegheny mountain building event, or Allegheny orogeny. That would have been about 300 million years ago, and shoved all this over the Valley and Ridge and just left this much of the Valley and Ridge exposed. And then the Cumberland Plateau is the same. Its geologic province is the same as the physiographic province. So that's a quick and dirty rundown of the physiographic provinces of Georgia versus the geologic provinces of Georgia. And when we talk about what's came next after the rifting of Rodinia, we'll talk all about these. We'll show you how all these geologic provinces, which were independent terrains that had unique geologic histories, how they formed. Okay, Papa out.